When I was a kid, one of my favorite things to play with was a stick. I know this sounds funny, but my childhood imagination could take a stick and make it into just about anything I could want it to be at that point, but especially, a good sword or a magical staff, whatever it needed to be at the moment. A good stick was always a special thing to have when I was a child. But I remember a lot of times when I'd gather with my friends and we'd go out to play or something and we needed to find a stick or something to use for whatever game we were playing or whatever fantasy we were imagining ourselves a part of. A lot of times they were not always plentiful, at least not on the ground. A lot of times the ones we'd find on the ground, we'd pick them up and they'd feel pretty lightweight, and we'd smack them around a few times to test them, and they'd explode. They were too brittle. They wouldn't work. They were too dead. And so we'd obviously need to search elsewhere to find a stick appropriate for what we needed. And I can recall several times where this was a problem, and we'd find a tree and we'd say, hey, that branch right there looks perfect. It's nice and straight, or it's got the curve that I'm looking for to be a particular type of tool that I want in this game. And so we'd try to get that branch down, and a lot of times I remember having trouble because the branch was still very fresh. And so if you know anything about the stick, it would sort of bend. It might snap a little bit here and there, but it would ultimately not break off like I needed it to. And that was always so frustrating for me as a young person, trying to get that stick that I wanted so badly. Oftentimes I think when we talk about doubts, because of what we talked about Sunday, I talked about how there's sort of this stigma against having a doubt, having an uncertainty, having questions. And that's problematic because what ends up happening is we think we have to do it all by ourselves. We have to try to work it out on our own. And what ends up happening is we separate ourselves from the source of our life-giving spiritual blessings in God. In John 15, Jesus talks about being the true vine and his Father being the vine dresser, the one who prunes it and keeps it healthy so that we can thrive within it. And what I've come to realize is sometimes when we have doubts and we make people feel uncomfortable about sharing those doubts, is we create this vacuum in their world where they have no place that they feel that they can connect with that, what they need to find a way through it. And they end up being like those brittle sticks that I would play with as a child. They snap, they break, and get obliterated because they've been completely disconnected from the source. And yet, the ideal situation is where, maybe that pulling on that twig is sort of the stress of doubt, and there's some pain and there's some bending and there's some uncomfortability with it, but there's no breaking because it's still connected to the tree, to what would be God in this image. And I think that's so important for us to remember. It doesn't mean we're always going to get all the answers. Again, that's something I also mentioned, but we don't always get all the answers we want, but we might get the answers we need. And that's what's so important about having the ability to share our doubts together, to walk through those uncertainties together, to say, I do believe, but I need help with my unbelief. I think that's so critical for a church to be able to do that. So this week I want to encourage you, this past Sunday I asked, do you have any doubts? Do you still have uncertainties that you're sitting with? I still have some questions myself that I struggle with, and I ask God, why are some of these things the way they are? I think that's really the question most of us ask is why. And maybe we won't get an answer. Maybe I won't get the answers to my whys all the time. But I think what's important is that I have this community of faith around me. I know I have people who share my faith that I can go to and say, I'm struggling with this. Maybe I won't get the answer I want, but they'll at least help me understand I don't need to have all the answers sometimes. And maybe sometimes the answers I get are what I actually need to hear to help me understand what God is up to and what He's doing in my life. So again, I want to encourage you to make sure that we are creating a space where uncertainties, doubts, questions are available to be asked, and that we don't shy away from them. That we also don't pretend we have all the answers, because if we have finite answers to infinite questions, we're never going to be encouraged to grow. And I think really God is always working on growing us. So this week I want to encourage you to let those doubts, those uncertainties, those questions be available, to be asked, to be brought up in conversations, to wrestle with those things. And let's do it together, folks. Because the world's got a lot of things that it's going to throw at us. It's going to make us question. It's going to make us wonder. But I think the beauty is that we have each other to lean on, to ask questions of, and to search for God and grow in our relationship with Him as a body. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Bye-bye.